Okay, moving on. I really want to focus on Pasuk Bet here where it says, Hine katon et aticha bagoyim v'zu ata meod. That behold, I have made you small among the nations. You are exceedingly despised. Almost letting the reader know that although this Pasuk is clearly speaking about Edom, that size ultimately does matter. That being limited to a small nation is for all intents and purposes a curse. Or why would the Almighty even care to entice Avraham Avinu with the promises of his descendants being as numerous as the stars or as the sand on the seashore? Now, we know that technically, if we were small, but at the same time keeping the Almighty's instructions, we would still be able to leave the Almighty's imprint on the world. But unfortunately, that is not the way the Creator functions. Now, Torah teaches us that He virtually always uses natural means to achieve supernatural results. Or why do you think that being small and scattered typically always spells disaster? And not just for Jews, but for any people, for the same reason that in the animal kingdom it is the small, the weak, and frail that get eliminated first. Or why was it when Israel was its strongest and most prosperous, was actually the only time in history that it was at peace with its neighbors, which was during the time of Shlomo Melech, when again, the children of Israel were numerous. But even geographically, Israel was its largest. Not to mention that a refusal to not worry about size and influence really demonstrates on how ultimately interested a group is in impacting others around them with their values. And friends, this brings up a topic I've heard mentioned many times to, in a way, try justifying the fact that we're small in number, in a way stating that this is how God wanted it to be, which is also an excuse given on why we push people or new adherents away, lest we change the pattern we see throughout history. Really, friends, in a religion where the average person or who is born into it is fighting to get out, what stupidity, which is actually one of the reasons that many leave Judaism in the first place, because apart from assuming that we are destined to be small, that also in some way we were destined to be persecuted, like Elie Wiesel writes on how he doesn't mind belonging to a people with a mission, but he didn't know that it was going to be a suicide mission. And all this, friends, is really the result of asceticism that has crept into the Emunah the last 1,000 years. So how does one respond to this line of thinking? Well, by clearly expounding on the Peshat of the Hebrew Bible and by directly confronting this gross misrepresentation of Scripture that has almost sadly become dogmatic in the Jewish world. And although this idea is unbiblical, the idea that we were destined to be small, it has actually been in the Jewish world for thousands of years, that eventually gave birth to notions of intrinsic worth in Judaism, a connection that is easily made after you corrupt one area of Torah thought. Think about it. If you have a God who intentionally wants to keep you small, it first tells you that He, the Almighty, not only does not care if you influence others, but rather He purposely wants others to stay away. That others don't hate you because of you, but because the Almighty programmed them to. Because, again, you were destined to be small and vulnerable. In other words, there is nothing you could say to others to get them to ever want to join you because you weren't allowed to expand. In other words, you have a maximum occupancy quota. And it also gives the impression that the Almighty actually cares about flesh and blood and not behavior and intentions, teaching us that the Almighty Himself is an amoral God, not caring about what is good or evil, and in some way twistedly infatuated with the small Semitic tribe called Israel. No, friends, behavior like that would be unbecoming of a good, moral, and just God, someone unworthy of worship. And friends, if you're part of the Orthodox world, I know you have heard rabbis mention it before, the famous words of the Rebbe, that God created us to be Israel and created them to be Goyim, and that we should be glad to be what the Almighty has made us, ultimately small and frail, almost teaching us that it's a waste of time to aspire. Tell that to anyone who wears glasses or bothers to brush their teeth or have surgery for any ailment they happen to be naturally born with. In other words, if we took that ideology to heart, by definition, we would never improve. However, friends, the truth is that we were not destined to be small. But like we said, as the Almighty promised Avraham, that we have the potential to be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. In other words, if we were ever small and despised, as Torah states, it is always our fault because of what we've done, and not because of how the Creator destined it to be, chas v'shalom. And if you ask, what could we possibly have done? Well, friends, by the simple fact that we failed to influence this world with the ethical monotheism contained within the Torah is reason enough. In other words, by failing to educate the world, we have created our own enemies.
So why does the modern day Jewish world continue with this form of victimized thought when the notion doesn't appear in Torah? Easy, because it feels good to be small and the underdog. Mainly because when you've been down for so long, you begin to discern the V for victim to in some way stand for victory. Actually, I've seen many rabbis as well as Christians use the tochacha or the tochacha, the portions in Torah that depict the curses that we will go through when we're shunned by the Creator, as proof that we were destined to suffer. When they fail to mention that before and after the Torah mentions these curses, it first speaks of all we can acquire and achieve just by keeping Torah, and how those curses are just warnings if we don't keep Torah. In other words, every curse in Torah is only a warning, and every blessing a conditional promise. So no, only because it may appear in Torah does not mean it is destined to happen, especially when it explicitly states that these things will only occur when we stray away from Torah. And then sometimes people quote that pasuk in Devarim where it states that the Almighty didn't choose us because we were so numerous, when we were the smallest of all peoples. But again, this is speaking about when He found us, and not what would become of us and what influence we would have after accepting and keeping Torah. But anyways, I think we'll end here. Please join us next week for the following Haftarah. And for more information on everything Jewish, please visit TorahJudaism.org. Thank you.